40%'s gone, Dylan said, tapping his pen like a metronome of arrogance. Do more with less, Linda. Or don't. The room went silent, numbers flashing red on the projector while my 16 years of work were reduced to a line item. I didn't argue. I just nodded once and closed my laptop. He thought he'd humiliated me. What he didn't know was that the system he'd just violated had a heartbeat of its own, and it had already started counting down. Before I continue, tell me, have you ever seen arrogance backfire this fast? Dylan Rogers didn't knock when he entered my office. He dropped a stack of budget reports on my desk like a verdict. 40% reduction, he said flatly, effective immediately. I blinked at the numbers glowing red on the screen. You're cutting nearly half my department's funding? We're trimming inefficiencies, he replied, leaning back in the chair I hadn't offered. Your team's role overlaps with automation. It's nothing personal. His tone made it clear it was entirely personal. Around us, the open office hummed with the false quiet that follows a public execution. Two analysts looked up, then quickly down. Dylan smiled for the audience. You've had a good run, Linda, but we need fresh systems, not sentimental legacy projects. My throat felt like it was filled with static. 16 years of building safeguards, training teams, catching errors before they cost millions, all rewritten as waste. I wanted to say something, but my voice would have cracked, and he didn't deserve the satisfaction. Instead, I closed my laptop, slow enough that he had to wait for the click. His grin faltered. We'll review your adjusted scope on Monday, he said, standing, assuming there's one left to review. He left his coffee ring on my report, a small stain of contempt. I stared at it until the office noise faded to a low hum, the kind that precedes a storm. He thought he'd erased my authority with a spreadsheet. What he didn't know was that the system would remember everything he touched. After Dylan left, the silence in my office felt surgical, clean, precise, and deliberate. I stared at the frozen cursor on my monitor, pretending to process the loss while my mind was already running audit protocols from memory. 5 years ago, after a similar budget optimization left the company exposed to a fraud case, I'd been asked to rebuild our internal financial system from the ground up. I did more than rebuild it. I coded in safeguards, quiet lines of logic that no one noticed because they didn't affect day-to-day operations. A checksum here, a permissions delay there, a watchdog buried under a generic label called FSA Protocol 9. Nobody asked what it stood for. They assumed it was something routine like financial system audit. In truth, it was a pulse, a silent signal that monitored every transaction for unauthorized edits. Any adjustment exceeding 10% of an approved budget triggered a cascade, an automatic compliance alert, external auditor notification, and a lockout sequence on the responsible account. It had never been activated before. Until today. I moved slowly, methodically, copying the timestamp from Dylan's access log before IT overwrote the daily records. I didn't have to lift a finger to start the process. The system had already begun whispering to the audit servers in the background, assembling packets of data like evidence preparing itself for trial. Dylan thought he'd flexed control, but he'd only pressed the first domino. I'd spent years watching men like him rise fast on buzzwords and boardroom charisma, assuming data would obey them because people did. He'd learned that numbers had memory. I opened my hidden dashboard and saw the indicator light blink amber, Protocol 9 engaged. My stomach flipped, a strange mix of dread and satisfaction. This wasn't sabotage, it was self-defense by design. The system wasn't loyal to me. It was loyal to integrity, and that made it far more dangerous than revenge. I minimized the window, just as a message popped up from accounting. Budget freeze detected, please advise. I typed back a calm reply, investigating. Behind the glass walls, Dylan was in the break room, laughing, gesturing with his expensive watch, confident he'd made his mark. He didn't realize he'd just signed his own audit trail. I turned off my monitor, took a slow breath, and whispered the words I'd programmed years ago as the activation code. Confirm integrity. The screen blinked once, green. Somewhere deep in the system, the countdown began. By the next morning, the ripple had begun. Vendors were emailing about missing payments, accountants were whispering about authorization delays, and Dylan was nowhere to be seen until 10 a.m., when he strutted through the hallway with the self-satisfaction of a man who thought chaos meant progress. I watched from my desk as he assured two nervous department heads that transitions take time. He didn't know yet that the transition wasn't his to control. While he was busy reassuring others, I was building my own archive. Every access log, every timestamp, every deviation from standard approval flow, I pulled them into a private drive labeled Q4 Review Draft. Harmless on the surface, lethal underneath. I'd spent enough years around finance to know that paper trails don't lie, even when people do. At 11:07, a system alert flashed across my hidden dashboard. External data packet confirmed by the compliance server. The auditors had received the signal. From here, everything was procedural, slow, inevitable, and completely out of my hands. That was the beauty of automation. I didn't need to act. I just needed to stay still and let accountability do its work. Around noon, an accountant named Carla stopped by my desk. "Is something wrong with the vendor queue?" she whispered, eyes darting toward Dylan's office. "Invoices are stuck in pending status." I nodded lightly. "System's running an integrity check. Just let it complete." She looked relieved, unaware she'd just described the quiet beginning of an external audit. Dylan called a meeting at 2 o'clock to address concerns about temporary slowdowns. He wore a smile too wide, too forced. "Our system's running an optimization cycle," he told the team. "No need to worry, it'll normalize soon." I kept my expression neutral, hands folded, watching as he tried to explain away a process he didn't understand. The irony almost made me laugh. By 3, I'd confirmed something worse. Dylan had routed several major supplier payments to a third-party vendor listed as Operational Efficiency Consulting. I traced the account. It linked to an entity registered 6 months ago in Delaware with no physical office. Classic shell pattern. Whether it was ego or greed, I couldn't tell yet. But the pattern was obvious to anyone who could read the metadata. I saved the screenshots, embedded them in an encrypted file, and stored the key phrase under a routine file name, Travel Approvals. Nobody would think twice about it. At 5, I sent a short email to legal. Budget anomalies identified, requesting confirmation of audit procedures. I didn't sign it with emotion or accusation. Facts would speak louder than outrage. Outside my window, the parking lot shimmered under late sun, workers leaving in slow drifts, unaware that tomorrow would arrive with auditors, not applause. I shut down my computer and looked at the empty space Dylan's reflection had just vacated through the glass wall. He thought the storm would start when he ordered it. He never considered that it had already begun without him. By Tuesday morning, the silence in finance was brittle. You could feel it in the way people typed. Quick, shallow strokes, as if afraid to make noise. My inbox was flooded with automated notifications, failed transfers, delayed approvals, halted disbursements. The system had moved beyond warnings. It was now executing the containment protocol. I didn't interfere. I simply monitored the cascade. Dylan burst into my office without knocking, his tie slightly off-center, his tone forced casual. "Linda, quick question. Why are vendor payments freezing?" I kept my voice steady. "The system's verifying anomalies in authorization hierarchy." He frowned. In English. "It's checking who changed what," I said, "and whether they had permission." A muscle twitched near his jaw. "This isn't supposed to happen," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "I authorize those." "Exactly," I said quietly, watching realization dawn in his eyes. He pivoted, left without another word, and I heard his office door slam a moment later. The system had already locked his credentials for the high-risk account group. He'd tripped every safeguard in place. At 9:12, I received a message from compliance. "External auditors will arrive within 72 hours due to auto-triggered review. Please prepare access documentation." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. For a moment, I wondered if I should warn him, give him a chance to clean up whatever he'd tangled himself in. But then I remembered the way he'd smirked when he said inefficiencies. I owed him nothing. The system would treat him like any other anomaly. Examine, isolate, correct. By noon, finance looked like a triage ward. Dylan paced between cubicles barking orders no one understood. His confidence cracked with each unanswered question. People started avoiding his gaze. The man who loved being the loudest voice in the room was now shouting into silence. At 2, IT tried to override the freeze. They failed. My code had been written to escalate every manual override attempt directly to the external auditors. Dylan called a meeting, demanded explanations, then stopped mid-sentence when the projector displayed a message in bright red text. Integrity verification in progress. Estimated completion, 42 hours. He stared at it like it was a personal insult. Who designed this garbage? He snapped. You're looking at her, I said calmly. He blinked, mouth parting slightly. You. After the 2018 fraud case, you were probably still in grad school. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room went still. Everyone understood something had shifted. He left the meeting without another word, and I returned to my desk, heart steady. At 4:03, the system sent one last alert. Audit trigger sequence confirmed. It was done. No one could stop what came next. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds collecting like an omen over the parking lot. Inside, Dylan's office light burned long after everyone else had gone home. He was trying to undo what he didn't understand. He'd wanted to control everything, except accountability. That part, he'd already handed over to me years ago, when he approved the system he never bothered to read. By Thursday morning, the storm had a face. 3 auditors in navy suits carrying tablets and sealed envelopes, escorted by security straight to finance. Their arrival was quiet, almost polite, which made it worse. The only sound in the hallway was the metallic click of their ID badges hitting the glass door. Dylan tried to intercept them before they reached the conference room, hand outstretched like he still controlled something. You'll want to talk to me first, he said, voice thin. The lead auditor, a woman with an expression carved from neutrality, simply replied, We'll talk to everyone. When she turned to me, I met her eyes and nodded once. She knew my name before I said it. She always did. Within 30 minutes, every financial system was in lockdown. No transfers, no approvals, no edits. Dylan's calendar filled with back-to-back, urgent audit inquiry meetings he hadn't scheduled. Employees whispered in the break room, guessing who was responsible. I heard it was an internal trigger, someone said. System caught something. Someone else replied, Yeah, but who built that system? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. At 10:15, the first audit query hit. Unauthorized budget reallocation, Project Titan. Dylan was sweating through his shirt when they called him into the conference room. Through the glass, I could see his hands gesturing wildly, the auditors sitting motionless, their screens reflecting red highlighted spreadsheets. The system didn't just track his changes, it recorded them, time-stamped them, mapped every unauthorized transaction to his login. Each edit was a breadcrumb leading straight to him. At noon, the auditors expanded the scope. They pulled vendor records, approval chains, and consulting contracts. That's when they found it. The Delaware Shell Company, the one labeled Operational Efficiency Consulting. They traced its bank account directly to a holding entity registered under a trust connected to Dylan's former firm. You could almost feel the temperature drop. The whispers in the hallway turned into avoidance. People started taking lunch elsewhere. No one wanted to be seen near his office. At 2:00, IT confirmed the integrity of the logs. No tampering detected, they reported to the auditors. Dylan's face was pale when he came out of the room. He avoided my eyes, muttering something about context and misunderstanding. But context doesn't save you when every keystroke has a timestamp. The board meeting was called for 3 challenges: legal, compliance, IT, and audit, all present. I wasn't invited, but I didn't need to be. From my desk, I could hear muffled voices through the frosted glass. One voice kept rising, Dylan's, each sentence sharper, more desperate. This is overreach. Those controls are outdated. I was optimizing. Then silence. Long, heavy silence. When the door opened, Philip, the CEO, walked out first, jaw tight. The auditors followed, faces unreadable. Last came Dylan carrying a cardboard folder, not meeting anyone's eyes. His badge clinked softly against the metal frame of the door as he passed security. They didn't escort him out, not yet, but everyone knew that was next. He disappeared into his office, closed the door, and the blinds dropped. A few minutes later, I received an internal message from legal. Please provide documentation confirming authorship and deployment of FSA Protocol 9. I replied with attachments, original source code logs, implementation memos, board sign-offs. Within minutes, a second message arrived. Acknowledged, confirmed, thank you, Linda. At 5:17 p.m., a company-wide email went out. Due to compliance irregularities, the finance department is undergoing an external audit. Such, department heads are to provide documentation by end of day. No one mentioned Dylan by name, they didn't have to. His absence said enough. I walked to the break room for tea. Carla from accounting was there, staring into her coffee. He looked scared, she said quietly. They asked for his laptop. They should, I replied. She nodded, unsure if I was agreeing or condemning. You think he'll be okay? She asked. Depends on whether the truth scares him, I said. She frowned, like she wanted to ask what I meant but didn't. I went back to my desk, the office dim and echoing. The auditors were still in the conference room, lights bright against the dark windows, silhouettes moving in quiet precision. The system had done exactly what it was built to do: detect corruption, preserve integrity, and deliver truth whether or not anyone was ready for it. Outside, rain began to fall, soft but steady, like punctuation to a sentence that had taken 5 years to finish. By Friday morning, the CFO's office was sealed. The blinds were still drawn, but his nameplate was gone, stripped from the glass overnight. People walked past, pretending not to look. It was dismantling his workstation, labeling cables, boxing equipment like evidence. The hum of servers filled the background, constant and cold. I arrived early, as I always did, and found an email from the CEO's assistant. Linda, please attend 9 a.m. meeting, conference room A. Bring documentation related to audit protocols. It wasn't phrased as a request. I printed the audit chain, the timestamp records, and the authorization memo bearing Dylan's digital signature. Every page smelled faintly of ink and inevitability. The boardroom was already half full when I walked in. The CEO sat at the head of the table, jaw set. Legal counsel and 2 auditors flanked him, screens glowing with data. Dylan was there too, standing off to the side like he'd wandered into his own execution. His suit was wrinkled, his confidence gone. Ms. Barrett, the CEO began, could you explain the audit system that was triggered earlier this week? I nodded. The FSA protocol was designed to protect against unauthorized budget adjustments exceeding 10%. It's automated. Once thresholds are breached, external review is mandatory. No manual override is possible without board authorization. Dylan shifted. She's exaggerating, he snapped. That system is outdated. She built it years ago. It's overreacting. The lead auditor turned to him. The logs indicate you changed vendor payment structures, rerouted funds, and bypassed internal approval flows. Were you authorized to do that? His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came. The CEO's gaze hardened. Answer the question. Dylan's voice cracked. It was efficiency testing, streamlining redundancies. The board expects results. And this consulting company in Delaware? Legal. Asked, sliding a folder toward him. Operational efficiency consulting, linked to your personal trust. Dylan's face drained of color. That's not... He started, but the auditor interrupted. We have the transaction trail. It's conclusive. The silence that followed stretched so long I could hear the faint buzz of the overhead lights. Finally, the CEO exhaled. Mr. Rogers, you're relieved of duty effective immediately. Security appeared, quiet and professional, like they'd been waiting outside for that cue. Dylan looked around the table as if expecting someone to intervene. No one did. As he was led out, he glanced at me, eyes hollow with disbelief. "You set me up," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "You set off the system." The door clicked behind him, final and echoing. The CEO turned to me. "Linda, I owe you an apology. What you built protected this company." His tone was measured, heavy with understanding. "We'll need you to oversee finance until a new CFO is appointed." I nodded once. "Understood." He paused, studying me. "You knew this would happen." "I designed it so it couldn't be avoided," I said. When I left the room, the hallway lights felt sharper, the air cleaner. Accountability had a scent, sterile, metallic, absolute. The system didn't lie. It never did. By Monday, the building felt lighter, as if someone had finally opened a window after years of stale air. The board issued a statement calling the audit a successful compliance validation, though everyone knew it was code for Dylan's downfall. His office remained empty, untouched, a glass box of silence that people passed quickly. I spent the morning in the conference room signing off on finance reauthorization forms. The CEO handed me a folder marked Promotion Confidential. Inside was a new title, Director of Compliance and Financial Integrity. The position reported directly to him. I'd have full oversight of audit systems, external reviews, and compliance policy design. "We want systems that think like you," he said. I smiled faintly. "You already have one." He chuckled, but his eyes carried respect this time, not dismissal. Later that day, HR called with a question about Dylan's severance. "He's contesting the termination," they said. "Claims procedural error." I sent them the audit log, page after page of time-stamped evidence, immutable and precise. 10 minutes later, HR replied with a single line. "Contest withdrawn." By evening, I sat in my office alone, the hum of the monitors steady and familiar. Outside, the city lights flickered across the glass, reflecting in the screen where the system's dashboard glowed green. Integrity status, stable. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. Not triumph, not revenge, just quiet alignment between truth and outcome. I'd been offered a role at another firm that afternoon, more money, new, challenges, but I declined. This wasn't about escape, it was about stewardship. Systems were only as ethical as the people who maintained them, and I wasn't done yet. I logged one final note into the system. Protocol validated, no manual intervention required. Then I shut off the lights, knowing the structure would hold, long after the people who doubted it were gone. Weeks passed, and the company's pulse steadied. The auditors closed their review with 0 findings against my department, a rarity they called statistical perfection. People stopped whispering when I entered rooms. Meetings shifted. The same executives who once questioned my caution now quoted my procedures like scripture. I let them. Legacy didn't need applause, it needed endurance. One afternoon, a young analyst named Marcy came to my office, nervous and hesitant. "How did you know it would all work?" she asked. "The system, the audit, everything?" I thought for a moment. "I didn't know it would," I said. "I just built it so that truth would survive even if I didn't." She frowned slightly. "So it wasn't revenge?" I smiled. "Revenge burns fast. Integrity lasts longer." She nodded, quietly absorbing the lesson that had taken me 16 years to learn. When she left, I reopened the dashboard. Every number glowed steady, every process balanced. The company's financial arteries were clear again, moving without corruption or manipulation. The system wasn't vengeful, it was mathematical, incorruptible, immune to charisma or titles. It simply responded to truth. That's what Dylan never understood. He thought control came from authority. It actually came from transparency. A week later, the CEO asked me to present a company-wide session on operational integrity. Standing before hundreds of employees, I didn't talk about the scandal. I talked about protection of systems, of people, of principles. "Accountability isn't punishment," I said. "It's gravity. You don't feel it until you try to defy it." Afterward, several employees stopped by to thank me, saying it made them proud to work here again. That night, Walking through the quiet parking lot, I thought about how easily arrogance unravels when truth is allowed to do its job. I didn't destroy anyone. I just built something that couldn't lie. The rest took care of itself. The truth is, winning didn't feel like victory. It felt like exhaustion with a pulse. For weeks after the audit ended, I'd wake up before dawn, half expecting another alert, another collapse waiting in the inbox. My hands would hover over the keyboard, still ready to defend, still ready to prove. That's what the fight took from me. Quiet. It took nights with my sister's calls ignored, weekends swallowed by spreadsheets, and an easy trust I used to give freely to people who sounded confident. I learned that integrity has a price, and sometimes that price is time you'll never get back. When you spend years holding a system together, you forget it's also holding you in place. The cold truth? Even justice costs energy. It drains you while it saves you. Still, I'd do it again, because the opposite, letting people like him rewrite reality, would have cost more. The system I built saved the company, but it also taught me something about myself. Patience and preparation are stronger than outrage. Anger might start the fire, but discipline keeps you warm when it's over. If you've ever been in a fight for fairness, know this. You'll lose pieces of yourself, but you'll gain proof that your voice mattered. Keep the evidence, stay calm, and let the facts do the shouting. That's the kind of revenge no one sees coming. How to get started today. Document everything, even when you think it's unnecessary. Don't rush your response. Precision is stronger than anger. Guard your peace. Winning doesn't mean burning yourself down. Build systems that protect truth, not ego. Remember, quiet doesn't mean powerless. It means prepared. What did fighting for fairness cost you? And was it worth it in the end?